Hello, SpongicX here with more custom stage footage from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And here we have another stage of The Nightmare Before Christmas, Curly Hill. So previously I showed a stage that someone made where, that one was more of a physical stage where it was mostly just like where you could interact with actually, like the hill, but this one, although the hill is less interactive than it was in the previous one, I must say like the design is a lot better though, because like you can see like all the other hills, the tombstones, and what I'm supposing are supposed to be pumpkins, and we even have like a little blocky looking Jack Skellington on the top, and I'm surprised we never really got like per se like a decent sequel to The Nightmare Before Christmas, because the closest we ever got to it was the video game Oogie's Revenge, and while I like the idea of that game, a part of it was kind of underwhelming though, because like what I thought was most disappointing about the game is when you read the plot, it's about where Jack has to save the other holiday icons. So, you know, the first movie, it showed how there were more holidays than just Christmas and Halloween because of all the doors that led to other holidays. Problem is that we never got to see them. And it's like, that would have been perfect, you know, like, storytelling for, like, sequels, per se. And so the fact that the plot of the sequel, in video game form was Oogie getting resurrected and kidnapping the holiday spirits, it's like, oh, are we finally gonna see, like, Jack, like, explore the other holiday worlds? Are we gonna see him interact with the other holiday icons? And, they did, like, a real cop-out, because we never actually got to see the holiday icons that Jack saves. We never got to see him step foot in the other doors. All the locations were based off of locations from the actual movies, so it was still just Christmas Town and Halloween Town, basically. And that was kind of underwhelming. I mean, it had good potential to be like a really good story worthy of, you know, like a theatrical release even, but, yeah, the execution could have been a lot better. I'd love to see, like, a proper version of that story, one where we actually see, like, what would it look like for, Jack to step through, like, Valentine Town, or, Thanksgiving Town, you know, St. Patrick's Town, 4th of July Town, whatever, I don't know, but, you know, it'd be really fun to see him explore all these other holidays and get an idea of what these other holidays would look like in Tim Burton's art style. That'd be kind of fun, but, who knows. As far as I know, that's one movie Tim Burton never wants to have a sequel for, so we're out of luck there. Now here we have a stage based off of Thwomp from Super Mario Bros. 3. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I hate how Nintendo's been bringing back the original Thwomp design in, like, the 3D Mario games. So, I thought the spiked Thwomps worked pretty well in, you know, the pixelated games, like Mario Bros. 3 and stuff like that, but, I honestly like the, more simple blue design they use for, like, Super Mario 64. Like, there's something about the face and, shape of him that I thought just really worked well with those kind of games, but for some reason, they just want to make him look gray and ugly again, like he did in Super Mario Bros. 3, and I just don't think that design works very well in 3D games. I thought it worked a lot better in the side-scrolling games, because here's the thing, the side-scrolling games, they made it look like those spikes were like really sharp and pointy, but I feel like in the 3D games, they make the spikes look a little too rounded. They, heck, I remember, like, even in Super Mario 64 DS, you know, they decided to remodel all the Thwomps to look like, the Mario Bros. 3 Thwomps, and so, Mario could flat out stand on top of the spikes without getting hurt. I thought that was ridiculous. So, I don't know, I really don't think the Thwomp designs the spiky ones work very well in 3D. I kind of wish they would bring back the blue thwomps that were introduced in Mario 64 while keeping the gray thwomps for the side-scrolling games. I don't know why, but I really do like some of the, I kind of miss some of the older, like, 3D Mario villain designs. Like, I'm not saying, like, the graphics of them, but, like, the color schemes of them. Like, I remember, like, in Mario 64, Mario Party, the piranha plants had green lips. And nowadays, like, I don't know what game it started in, but I noticed the modern-day piranha plants now have white lips all of a sudden. And I don't really like that design very much. I liked it better when they had the green lips. I mean, the only modern-day piranha plant that still has green lips, as far as I know, is PD Piranha. But, like, you know, Piranha Plant in Super Smash Brothers, he has the white lips. I don't know, I like the green lip Piranha Plant a lot better. I'm trying to think if there were any other, like, drastic changes that were made to any Mario villains recently. Like, ones that have changed from, like, because, you know, it's like the GameCube era, that recycled a lot of the same, like, color schemes as some, like, the N64 villains, but, you know, but they made them more polished and refined, and so it wasn't until, like, the Wii era where you kind of started noticing some changes with some of the character designs. Yeah, come to think of it, Mario Galaxy might have been the start of where, some of these villains were suddenly drastically changing in appearance. If not that, it was Mario 64 DS, I suppose, but... So here we have Chun-Li from Street Fighter. I don't know, I feel very mixed about Street Fighter. I mean, I do think it's a fun idea for a game, and I do like the characters and stuff like that. I just really don't like the gameplay very much, though. I kind of wish they'd make, like, a more modern-day Street Fighter, because, I just feel like the difficulty is just, a little too high up there. I really don't like games that have, like, well, it's like, I like fighting games, but I hate it when they have those really complicated move sets that require you to memorize, like, really ridiculous patterns that are really hard to pull off. You know, like, no, there shouldn't have to be a move where you have to, like, swirl a control stick multiple times and press a certain button combination just to get a character to do a certain move. That's ridiculous. That's one reason I prefer Super Smash Brothers, where, you know, to pull off a combo or a move is much easier because the controls are more simplified. And it's like, just because the controls are simple doesn't mean that the mechanics are limited, necessarily. There's still a lot you can do in Smash Bros. Despite having less commands to work with. And, you know, it's like, I definitely enjoy games like Soul Calibur, Street Fighter, and Dead or Alive a lot more if it didn't make all the controls so complicated. Or if it made some kind of shortcuts to using some of these commands. I mean, that's one thing I found kind of interesting about Dead or Alive Dimensions on the 3DS, because it allowed you to pick, you know, it allowed you to customize a little thing on the touchscreen where, for certain moves that were too hard to pull off, you could make, like, your own little custom touch button for the characters to pull off that move. And it's too bad not enough games have, like, that kind of functionality. I really do think some fighting games need to be a little more simplified in order to be more enjoyable. But, another thing that kind of bugs me about the Street Fighter series is I really think the art style just doesn't fit anymore. I mean, you know, it's like they're trying to capture the feeling of the old arcade games as much as they can, to a point where it has very choppy frame rate, just like an old arcade game, and I just don't think that blends in very well with the art style. Because I thought, you know, Street Fighter 5, it actually did a pretty good job at updating the characters to look more detailed and stuff like that. The problem is that because of how choppy the frame rate is, it makes the movement look terrible. Now, it's like one reason I like Soul Calibur and Tekken games a lot better is because they've gotten with the times. They've upgraded the frame rate to kind of match the graphics a lot better. And so, I feel like Street Fighter could make the graphics look a little better, and the frame rate needs to be a lot smoother. It looks like you're watching a stop-motion film, which just does not really match the theme they're going for. They're trying to make it feel like, high-speed action fighting, and it just doesn't work when the characters look like they're moving like clay figures. I don't know. I apologize if anyone else disagrees with that. No harm done. Everyone has their own opinion. Yeah, I really do think that some fighting games need to be touched up. And also, I'm really sad to see that it sounds like we're not going to get Tekken Cross Street Fighter after all. I was looking forward to that, because I remember when they first announced Street Fighter Cross Tekken, they announced how they were also working on Tekken Cross Street Fighter, which would be a crossover that plays more like the Tekken games, where Street Fighter Cross Tekken played more like a Street Fighter game and had the art style of Street Fighter 4. So I would love to see. I really wanted to see the other way around, because I'm more of a fan of Tekken personally. Although I was very disappointed with Tekken 7 overall. Though I don't even have that game anymore. I thought it was very underwhelming. I didn't even bother waiting for the first DLC. I just felt ripped off right away. And man, sorry to switch topic, but man, this stage is laggy. This is probably one of the worst performing stages I've seen. It's apparently Bellsprout from Pokemon, but oh god, why does it lag so badly? You think a stage with such a simple art style? That's one thing I noticed. I noticed a lot of stages that have like outlines. They seem to, especially pixelated outlines, they tend to cause the stages to lag. You think, apparently it takes more effort to make these kind of stages because you have to draw the outline separately, and trust me, it's hard to draw outlines on custom stages, ones that match up. You're going to have to do a lot of undos and retries if you want to get to look perfect, and unfortunately, I don't have that kind of patience. I'm more of an artist where I have an idea and I try making it out as quick as I can, while trying to make it look as nice as I can. I'm not the best artist. I was a self-taught artist, unfortunately, and I try doing it the way you're supposed to, like the way they teach you in classes, and I just can't do what other artists do, unfortunately. And that's one main reason I gave up on becoming an animator, unfortunately. I mean, I wish I could still make cartoons for a living, or art for a living, but, the best I can do is just do art for fun, but it's not going to be perfect, unfortunately. God, it sounds like this where I realized, man, it's a good thing that custom stages can't be played online. Could you imagine how much worse the stage would perform if you did, like, 4-player Smash online? Oh, man, the lag would be terrible. As if it's not bad enough already. I mean, I'm just playing against CPU members right now, and this is terrible. It's a shame, too. The stage looks nice. I mean, I like the pixelated Bellsprout and Pokeball, but, why is it moving so terribly? Can't think of any other stage that performed this badly. I really wish we would get like a Pokemon fighting game like Smash Brothers, because I was not a huge fan of Pokken Tournament. I thought it was a real ripoff. I didn't even bother buying the Switch version. I bought the original Wii U version, and I was already underwhelmed by that game, and I was hoping Nintendo would add like free DLC for that game. So when I heard they were bringing it over to Switch, I was already disappointed, but then I was like, okay, maybe they'll introduce a whole lot of new content. Maybe it'll make me want to buy the game again, and no, it did not. In fact, it announced DLC, despite being called Pokken Tournament Deluxe. I thought that was a terrible selling point on their part. They should have added a whole bunch of new content and give people a reason to want to buy it in the first place. And so I skipped out on that. I mean, it's a shame too. Pokken Tournament's gameplay wasn't too bad. The problem is that because there was such a limited roster, it just didn't give you a reason to want to play because it felt like you're fighting the same Pokemon over and over and over. I mean, one reason why Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is so amazing is because there's so many characters that when you randomly select them, you don't know who's going to show up next, and that's what adds to the variety of this game. But with Pokken Tournament, when it feels like every match you're just going to be fighting, like Lucario, Charizard, Blaziken, you know, it gets tiring after a while. You want to see more variety, and then you see like how there's so many Pokemon that were just wasted as summons instead of playable characters. So yeah, really they should make a Smash Brothers clone of Pokemon. I feel like they would be able to get away with a lot more. So here we have a stage based off of Roll from Mega Man Legends, or for those who like to call it Mega Man 64. That's like one of the only Mega Man games I ever played, Mega Man 64. I never played through all the way, but I had a lot of fun playing that game though. It kind of saddened me to realize that all the other Mega Man games weren't really like it. They were more like a brutal, difficult version of Metroid, but with a more arcade-like style, where Metroid was more of an exploration labyrinth style. But Mega Man Legends, I thought that was really fun. It reminded me of like what would the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time play like if it was more of a shooter. Yeah, some could argue like the voice acting and graphics haven't aged well, but I remember for the time, I thought the graphics were really good. They did a really good job at trying to make it feel like a living anime with how limited the restrictions of the graphics were at the time, and so that was my introduction to Mega Man, and so it was kind of, you know, it's weird when you like a certain form of it and then you realize that was just a spin-off. That's not what the main games are like. I mean, I know some people felt that way about like Banjo-Kazooie. I remember like meeting some people who played Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts for the first time. They weren't aware that that was a sequel. They said they liked the game, and then I'd tell them, oh, I like the originals a lot better. And then they'd ask, there were originals? I'm like, yeah, didn't you see the beginning of Nuts and Bolts? It flat out showed flashbacks to them. And so, you know, I'd tell people about how the originals went, and then they would go like, dang, I want to play that version now. So, yeah, like, it's funny how some games can do that. There's some games that get worse when they're a spin-off, and then there's some games that get better when they're a spin-off. I mean, to this day, I know there's a lot of people who prefer Metroid Prime over the traditional Metroid games. There are people who prefer the 3D Zelda games over the traditional overview Zelda games. There are people who prefer the Mario 64-esque platformers of Mario versus the side-scrolling Marios. So yeah, it's pretty interesting how that can work sometimes. That's a problem with some game companies, though. You know, you think game companies would learn that they would, you know, that they'd probably benefit more if they tried appeasing the both kind of fan bases. You know, that's one thing that I think Sega needs to do with Sonic the Hedgehog, because lately they're too focused on trying to please the classic Genesis fans, or the modern-day Sonic Unleashed fans, but they're completely ignoring the Dreamcast fans, those who love the Sonic Adventure gameplay. They act like it's flawed, and yes, it is flawed, but it had a lot of potential, and what we're asking of Sega is to fix it, improve it. And they're just acting like, no, no one wants those games anymore, and boy, are they wrong. I mean, look at Microsoft. They acted like for years that platformers were dead, nobody wanted another Banjo-Kazooie, despite how many people were complaining. Yet Ukulele came out, and before that game even came out, when it was just a Kickstarter, it was already a success financially before it even was made. That showed how much people really wanted these games. And sure, Ukulele wasn't perfect, but that was kind of one of the biggest problems of the game. It tried too hard copying off of Banjo-Kazooie that it didn't really offer much anything new. It just felt kind of like a more bland version of Banjo-Kazooie. And so, like I've said before, I said in a previous video, like what I think they could do to improve Banjo-Kazooie, and I suggested, you know, try to add more variety to the gameplay, because I mentioned how like Banjo-Tooie introduced a lot of new stuff, but it was still very limited, because you know, they introduced a new way to shoot eggs in the game, which was not only did you get different kind of ammunition, but you also had certain segments where you got to pull out Kazooie and use her like a first-person gun shooter. But the problem is you can only do that in certain areas, and first-person felt a little too extreme for a Banjo-Kazooie game. I mean, I thought Donkey Kong 64 did a much better job at introducing shooting mechanics into the series, because the way they had it, where you didn't always have to go into a first-person perspective when shooting. So it's like I said, you know, if they ever made a sequel to Banjo-Tooie, one thing they could do to improve the shooting mechanics is not only could they have it where Banjo could now have the ability to use Kazooie in a shooting gameplay anytime he wants, but they should change the gameplay perspective, kind of like to a third-person view instead of a first-person view. So kind of like the Ratchet and Clank games, like when certain weapons are equipped, you can, you know, like kind of toggle the controls so it changes the camera angle to where Ratchet can strafe left and right, you know, step backward and forward, and aim and shoot with like the crosshair and stuff like that. And I think like a Banjo-Kazooie sequel could benefit from that kind of gameplay. You know, they could add more replay value by having more temporary collectibles, like, you know, collectibles you can actually get from defeating enemies, which you can stock up on to get like upgrades for some of your items and abilities. So yeah, there's a lot they could do to modernize the Banjo-Kazooie format, just like how Ratchet and Clank modernized the 3D platforming era after Banjo-Kazooie and stuff like that. And so it's just kind of sad. That's what really saddened me about Yooka-Laylee. If it was trying too hard to be like a cross of Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, but it just felt kind of bland and empty overall. It didn't have as much variety as Kazooie and Tooie had. Near we have a stage of Squilliam from SpongeBob. Yeah, going back to like the topic of you know, like modernizing a game. So there's kind of rumors right now that there might be a Conquer 2 announced at E3, and it does sound kind of suspicious though, because I mean, not only with that rumor popping up, but the fact that out of nowhere Chris Seaver has suddenly been showing a lot of interesting information and you know, like unrevealed concept art of like Conker's Other Bad Day, the original planned sequel that was meant for GameCube. And a part of me just kind of notices how like it looks like it was trying too hard to copy off of what the original did in a way, because you know, not that that's a problem, but I feel like if they wanted to make a modern-day sequel, they probably would have to do a little more of the gameplay. So they, Chris Seaver confirmed that he felt like the game should have been linear again, and that was one of my biggest problems with the original Conker's Bad Fur Day. Now, I thought the linearity only worked really well for like the replayability. I thought it was really fun to be able to, you know, go back to the chapter select and re-explore certain areas with like different limitations, where, you know, a certain part won't open up until a certain cutscene is triggered later on in the game, or so that was kind of different. But a part of me kind of hated how, you know, there are certain levels where you got a certain ability and it made you want to go into another level and use that ability, only to find out you can't go back to that level anymore. And so that's one reason why I feel like if they made a Conker's Bad Fur Day sequel, I kind of want them to make more of, you know, it's like, maybe if they had it more like, I don't know, but I thought, you know, like, for instance, Grab by the Ghoulies, that kind of did a slightly better job at having, like, a better version of, like, a chapter select from Conker, because, the problem with Conker's Bad Fur Day was, there weren't as many chapters to choose from, where Grab by the Ghoulies had a whole lot of chapters. The problem is that a lot of them got repetitive, but there was definitely more locations to explore despite having less settings. I mean, Rat by the Ghoulies took place in one location, technically, just a giant mansion, but the fact that there were so many different rooms, and they had such, varying shapes and sizes, and that's what kind of made it interesting. And so, I felt like with Conker's Bad Fur Day, though, some of these linear areas felt a little too small. I mean, when you look back at the beta version, 12 Tales Conquer 64, that game looked pretty big, honestly. It makes me sad that that game was canceled. I would have loved to have gotten that and then Bad Fur Day afterwards. And to this day, I still wish Rare would somehow release 12 Tales to the public, even if it is a digital-only release. But so with Conker 2, though, it's like I thought like one thing they could have done was kind of tried making it a little more Banjo-Kazooie-esque, I guess, kind of like how 12 Tales presented itself. I'd like there to be more levels with like story-driven elements, but I kind of want there to be like more objectives, less linear, more exploration and how you want to tackle certain challenges. Now, I don't mind there being some form of linearity in between, because I agree that like important chapter segments in the game do need to feel a little more linear, but getting to those points, I think they should try having a little more freedom to it. I mean, Conker's Bad Fur Day, it almost kind of had moments like that, but then it felt kind of useless in the end after you beaten the game and tried replaying it. You kind of notice how linear it really is. Because, it kind of teases you that there are certain collectibles you need in the game, like the money. They tell you, like, come back when you get this, come back when you have, like, this amount of money. The problem is that the game does a terrible job telling you how much you'll need. And, it's like, usually it's like once you get, like, one wad of cash in a cutscene, that's enough to get into the next area. And, so, I don't know, it didn't feel like Banjo-Kazooie, where it told you, like, oh, to get here, you have to have, like, 20 jiggies. And so it's like, okay, I have this many levels available, let's try going through these levels and finding what I need. And so, I'd love to see Conker try to improve upon that, try to mix in their, cutscenes and parodies, but try applying it to, like, more, optional gameplay experiences, kind of like what Banjo-Kazooie did. Heck, I know it's like Conker's Bad Fur Day, there are actually a few, like wads of cash you didn't even need to collect in order to beat the game, and that kind of felt strange. Because the game almost presents itself where you have to collect all the cash in order to make it to the finish, but there's at least two, if I'm not mistaken, that you can actually skip without it affecting the plot, and they're both in the Windy chapter. Like, one of them is on the very top of the Pooh Mountain in order to get... That was, like, one I had trouble getting, when I was younger, but eventually I figured it out, what you had to do. So for those who don't know, you have to roll like a poo ball all the way to the top, and then but you have to be careful not to push it off the ledge or down the hole. And so once you get to the very top, you then got to jump on the ball, and then it gives you enough elevation to jump up and get that cash. And the other one is I'm not sure if this one's optional, but as far as I know it is, because I don't recall it really affecting the gameplay. But another one is in the Windy chapter, in the Beehive. You'll notice like how there's one like high up, like in one of the honeycombs. So to get to that one, you gotta like do a high jump up above like one of the little honeycombs against the wall, and then you go through it, and then when you go through it, then all of a sudden takes you up to that higher one where the cache is. And so that one's actually pretty easy to figure out. You just gotta look around and notice that, oh, there's something I can jump up to, and that's about it. But speaking of, an N64 classic, this stage I was fighting on was the old N-Cube logo, the thing that Conker murdered. That's one thing I miss about the N64 version of Conker's Bad Fur Day. I mean, I loved how, on Rare Replay, they brought back the N64 version to be playable. The problem is they cut out the intro. That was one of the best, I remember just laughing so hard when I first saw that. That it was so unexpected. And it's a shame that they didn't somehow substitute it, like replace it with a Microsoft logo or something. I thought that would have been fine, but yeah, that's the only casualty we got from having the game ported to Xbox One, unfortunately. But yeah, I overall do Um, Aurora Borealis. Good lord, what is happening in there? But, so, going back to Conquer, I overall do like the concept for the sequel that Chris Ebert planned. I like the idea of how it's about the Panther King, striking a deal with Death, or Greg, and, because they want revenge on Conquer, because Greg, you know, he's tired of Conquer, escaping Death, basically, and Panther King wants revenge, and he thinks, you know, Conquer is the one who killed him, despite the fact it was actually the Professor. But, so I love the concept of how, you know, the whole game is about the Panther King, taking possession of Conquer's body, making him like an evil version of Conquer, and then leaving the real Conquer trapped, like in, Hell, basically. And so the whole game is about Conquer escaping Hell and trying to get his body back. And, so there would have been two playable characters. Evil Conquer, which was the Panther King in Conquer's body, and, the other Conquer, well, the original Conquer, Conquer's soul, I guess. But it kind of makes me wonder, though, so, they revealed that the whole game wouldn't have had Conquer as, like, a ghost or something like that, so it makes me wonder, because, so how would have Conquer, like, gotten into an original body? Like, that's kind of what I want to know, because, it looks like most of the game would have had him, like, in his Live and Reloaded looking appearance. And so it makes you wonder, so, okay, if he looked like that, but he hasn't gotten his body back yet, then what happened? But, other than that, it's like, for the most part, though, the only thing I don't really like about the sequel is how they decided to make Barry the villain. Now, I'll admit, it's an interesting twist, but it's just kind of heartbreaking, because I kind of liked how the original had a very emotional ending, where Conquer felt terrible about Barry's death, he felt like he was kind of responsible for it, and so, to see that the sequel, they decided to turn Barry into the villain, I thought that was kind of, not only that, but they had her, like, as, like, some kind of Terminator. She was resurrected by aliens, apparently, and she decides to go on a killing spree. She wants to kill Conquer for who knows what reason. And now, honestly, I do think this could have worked in a different way, because, so one thing that always bugged me about Conquer's Bad Fur Day is, okay, why the heck was Barry kidnapped in the first place? Because, you know, there's that one cutscene where you see her getting kidnapped by, like, the Rockmen from the, caveman level, and, it just, and then, you know, it's like, she suddenly seemed to be acting different during that scene, because she suddenly didn't recognize who Conquer was, despite the fact that he was just wearing a slight disguise that she should have been able to recognize, and then it's like, we don't see her again until the final chapter, and it made me realize, though, that the game had a lot of unexplained things, because, in the end, it was obvious that, the Professor was, going behind the King's back the whole time. You know, so when he said that, they needed a squirrel to replace the King's table leg, it turned out obvious that the Professor actually had another reason to want a red squirrel for. He was just using it as an excuse to kill two birds with one stone. He wanted to both get a squirrel like he needed, but at the same time, he wanted to kill the King. And so he thought he could work that way around by, trying to trick the King into thinking that they needed a red squirrel. So when, you know, so we never learned what the King what the Professor actually needed Conquer for. And, so it kind of makes you wonder, is that why Barry was kidnapped in the first place? Was he trying to use her to get to Conquer? And so I can imagine, like, you know, if they made a sequel, it would have been kind of fun to, learn that, the real Barry is alive, and here's what happened to her. So, it's like after the Professor kidnapped her, he probably hired, you know, Don Weezo, to, basically interrogate her and, get her to, you know, like, you know, it's kind of slightly established in the game that, Barry was some kind of model, because you see, like, her picture in, like, magazines and stuff like that, so it's possible that, in that sense, it was known that Conquer was her boyfriend to the public. They knew, like, this, celebrity, Barry, is dating this, red squirrel, and so that's probably why the Professor had her kidnapped in the first place. And so he's probably they're probably interrogating her to try to, you know, reveal where they could find Conquer, and so what if, Barry refused to cooperate? She wasn't going to, you know, abandon Conquer, or betray Conquer, I mean, and so eventually, what if the Professor gave up and decided to just clone her and make an obedient clone of her that would do whatever he says? And so then the real Barry's trapped, and meanwhile, at the end of the game where Conker meets up with Barry and she's dressed like Trinity from the Matrix, what if that wasn't the real Barry? What if that was actually the clone? And I think that would have been a more interesting twist. You know, imagine how furious Conker would be in like a sequel if, you know, like you know, he like corners Don Weezo and wants revenge on him for killing Barry, and then what if Don Weezo, you know, reveals, what if I told you Barry's still alive? And, you know, then all of a sudden he spills the beans on what really happened. And so Conker, you know, it's like they could still have the Barry Terminator, but I'd like to have them have the reveal that the real Barry is out there somewhere. So apparently the game tries fooling you into thinking something like that would happen, though, because they did confirm that there is a clone of Barry that would have been in the game, but unfortunately that's a fake Barry. So the evil Barry is the real Barry, and then the one that seems like the original actually turned out to be a clone. And so I thought that kind of felt like a weak twist. And they gave Conker a new love interest too, Bunny the Rabbit. As if people didn't think Barry looked enough like Lola Bunny to begin with. They flat out made Conker's next girlfriend a Lola Bunny, you know, knockoff. And so it sounds like Conker was supposed to get married to this character at the end until the Terminator Barry interrupts the wedding, making another cliffhanger ending. So it was never confirmed that there would have been a third Conker, though, because it was obvious from the first Conker game that there always was intended to be a sequel, but with how much of a cliffhanger the sequel actually had, it's hard to tell. Because I don't think Chris Evert ever confirmed he had plans for a third one. He always said he always had plans for a second one. But so I'm sorry to talk about that for so long, but I just kind of wanted to get that off my chest. But so yeah, like, it seems kind of suspicious that all of a sudden Chris Evert is just revealing a lot of info of this scrap sequel that was originally being worked on as far back as like 2001. And so, you know, it's like, why is he waiting so long to reveal all of this? Is he trying to build up some kind of hype? And then recently there's a rumor that both Banjo-Kazooie and Conker will be making a return at E3 this year. You know, announcements for sequels. And so although I'm not sure about Banjo-Kazooie, I really do think that the Conker one sounds pretty likely. It sounds like that, and a lot of the response to this scrap sequel, you know, stuff being shared, a lot of people have shown a lot of positive interest in it. I mean, look at me, I'm a guy who's kind of mixed about, like, a certain aspect of it, but despite that, though, I still think the sequel sounds amazing. I still want to play it. I still wish it got made. And so, yeah, I do think that the Conker sequel sounds pretty likely, and that, and there also seem to be a lot of other hints that suggest it. I mean, haven't you noticed how lately there's actually been quite a bit of some Conker Banjo merchandise? I mean, like, you know, we've been getting some collectible figure announcements from different companies, and like I got like those like 2 figures they released recently, like the one where it shows Banjo and Kazooie playing their instruments, and the one where Conker has his war gear on, and I thought those were really well made figures. It's like, it's almost too bad they're not amiibo figures. So because of all this attention that Conker Banjo's been getting all of a sudden, it seems like they're trying to bring the series back, and hopefully this E3 does confirm that there is going to be a new series coming out for them. Well, a new entry. Problem is that I fear that if they do announce a new one, they're going to announce it be for the next Xbox, and I swear I'm going to be so pissed if that happens, because the main reason I bought an Xbox One to begin with was because of Rare Replay. That was the whole reason I wanted an Xbox One, just to play these Rare classics again. Well, I think that's enough to talk about the Rare franchise right now. So here's a stage based off of Batman the Animated Series. I know a lot of people are a little angry right now because Warner Bros. Decided to get Edward Collins from Twilight to play as the next Batman, and honestly, I'm not too bothered by it, because while I do think Twilight is a terrible franchise, I have no problems with Edward Cullen, honestly. I think he is a pretty good actor. I thought he did a good job in Harry Potter Goblet of Fire, and there's also another movie he was in called Water for Elephants. I thought he did a good job in that. So, you know, I feel like too many people are just hating it because of Twilight, but it's like, if you look past Twilight, he's actually a pretty good actor. To be fair, no one in Twilight was a good actor, even if they had a good resume. But, so, you know, you can't really blame the actors in that movie. You gotta blame the direction and the writing. But, so, honestly, I'm not too offended by Edward Cullen being the next Batman. You know, I'll give it a chance, see how it works. I still don't see why so many people were mad over Ben Affleck being the previous Batman. I didn't think he did that bad of a job. The main problem I had with it was the writing and direction, but I had no problem with Ben Affleck as Batman. So here we have Lynn from Fire Emblem. Out of all the Fire Emblem characters to be playable, why was Lynn never one of them? I still don't understand that. I mean, I still think she would have been a very decent Fire Emblem character. She probably would have had the benefit of being both the fastest and having the most range when it comes to close combat sword fighting, because you know, most of these Fire Emblem characters have very similar swords. Like, almost all of them are like a clone of the kind of sword Marth has. The only exception being, like, Ike, who has a slightly bigger sword. That's about it. So, Lynn, she has, like, one of those more, like, longer, skinnier swords, which allows her to strike more fiercely. And, I mean, even her assist trophy is kind of underwhelming. She just does, like, one slash, and that's it. And it's like, look at Fire Emblem here. Well, Fire Emblem Warriors, where, like, there's a reason why she was a hidden character, and that's because she is so good at combat. She was really fast and athletic, and it's like, I want to see that in Smash Brothers. I want to see that version of Lynn fighting. I don't just want to see her appear once and just do one slash and then disappear. That's underwhelming. I mean, look at, although Crystal wasn't playable, and I wish she was, at least she did more than Lynn does as an assist trophy. I mean, Crystal's out there for quite a bit. She'll, you know, do a few flips, strike with her staff, and use some ice spells, and it makes you sad that she wasn't playable either, though, because she could do so much more than that, as seen in, you know, Star Fox Adventures. But, yeah, Lynn, it's like, I just don't get why out of all the Fire Emblem characters, why didn't they pick her? She could have been so interesting. She had potential of being, like, a really fast and stealthy, sword fighter. That's kind of a reason why I wish, you know, like, Amy from Sonic was playable, because a lot of people complain, oh, she'd just be another hammer wielder. Not the way I see it. She would be a fast and athletic hammer wielder. Because, let's face it, out of all the hammer wielding characters we have, all their attacks are pretty sluggish. Ice Climbers, King Dedede, I mean, they have very slow movements, very slow jump height, and, which is ironic because King Dedede can technically fly, and yet his height isn't very good unless you use, like, his up special. So, look at Amy, for instance. I mean, she used to be a very slow character, but over the years, she's gotten a lot faster. So, having, you know, like, a faster-paced hammer wielder could make for an interesting moveset. That, and, it's like, she has so many abilities that could be carried over from other games, too. Like, she was able to create, like, pink tornadoes, like in Sonic Heroes, just by swinging her hammer. And then, let's see, she had, like, a triple jump in Sonic Boom Rise with Lyric. She had, like, that one ability in Sonic Adventure where if she ran fast enough, she could, catapult herself into the air by, kind of pole vaulting with her hammer, just by slamming down on the ground with it, and so she'd have, like, so many different hammer attacks, hammer spins, hammer swipes, hammer swings, hammer pounds, you know, it's like, I feel like there's so much they could do with Sonic characters in Smash Brothers, and I hate how everyone acts like, oh, Smash Bros. Characters of Sonic would ruin the game, they would all feel like clone characters, but then meanwhile they root for characters like, you know, Little Mac. Before I go on with that, I just want to say, so here's a stage I made of Rayman, another character who should have been playable in Smash Brothers. But so anyways, like, I hated how a lot of people, you know, they like, I'd argue that, you know, I'm kind of sad that Little Mac was chosen to be a playable character. Why not someone like Knuckles the Echidna? I'd get a lot of backlash for saying that, unfortunately, but here's my reason, though. To me, Little Mac is just too basic of a fighter. All of his, like, to me, he felt like a dumbed-down version of Mario, because Mario already was a character who could punch and uppercut, And so Little Mac, he was just, you know, he was just Mario, but slightly overpowered, but had too many shortcomings, along with having a really annoying counterattack and a knockout meter. But now imagine if Knuckles the Echidna were a playable character. Now I would see him as a superior version of what Little Mac can do, because he'd already be able to do what Little Mac can do, uppercut, punch. But let me ask you this: can Little Mac dig underground like a drill? And can he throw and smash boulders? Can he glide? Can he climb up walls? See where I'm going with this? Knuckles, he just has a lot of abilities, and he would have... Instead, they had him as an assist trophy, and that was kind of disappointing. Now, Tails, he would be an interesting character. He would be able to fly. He would have a bunch of gadgets inspired by, like, some of his gadgets from previous games, like the dummy ring bombs he had in Sonic Heroes. Those could be kind of like a fun little novelty for him to throw around. And then his final smash would be where you could summon, either his plane or his cyclone, and just start, flying around and shooting people with like lasers and, so yeah, I really don't understand. Now I can understand like why people would think like Shadow the Hedgehog would be kind of pointless, because yeah, Shadow mostly would just be an overpowered clone of Sonic, and people are kind of sick of those clone characters. I mean, the only difference I could see Shadow having would be like his you'd be able to, his final smash would probably be like Chaos Blast or something, that's about it, but, possibly, they'd give him Chaos Spear as well, but other than that, he'd mostly just be a clone of Sonic's moveset, and so I never understand, like, when most people want another Sonic fighter, why do they want Shadow? Why not Tails, Knuckles, or Amy? I think they would add more, better moveset. Heck, even Silver the Hedgehog or Blaze the Cat, I think they would be more interesting. We don't have a whole lot of characters that rely a lot on psychic powers, aside from like Mewtwo and Zelda. But even then, Silver, he was able to do a lot more than just pick up objects telekinetically. I mean, he could levitate. He could create like shock waves on the ground. He could kind of like warp through the air really fast. I mean, like Zelda and Mewtwo can warp, but they do it in a very slow fashion. So, it's like, I could see, like, Silver's teleporting being more like a side special than an up special. Blaze the Cat, it would be kind of interesting to see, more of a firefighter who actually fights with, like, actual combat instead of just, like, projectile attacks. Because, let's face it, like, almost every character who has, like, a fire ability in Smash Brothers, they're projectiles. So, Mario, he shoots fireballs out of his hands. Charizard, he breathes fire. Bowser, he breathes fire. Now, Blaze the Cat, it's like she's the character who can create, like, flaming tornadoes. She can ignite her body with flames, and, there's so much that she can do compared to, like, the other fire attacks, because it's kind of a shame how almost every fire attack in Smash Bros. Is just, a fireball or flamethrower, fire breath, that's about it. And it would be kind of nice to see more variety than that. Well, that's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.